We come on the air tonight with another bizarre day in the history of the Supreme Court after a document that could indicate which way it's leaning in a very key abortion case was mistakenly posted. We're live with how it happened. And then, by the way, what comes next? Plus, most Americans, they say they're planning to watch tomorrow night's presidential debate. Our reporters are watching the last-minute preparations and seeing if former President Trump is going to name a running mate before he actually takes the stage. And you got floods, you got fires, and fear. Millions facing dangerous conditions. We're going to tell you about where it could be a scary night ahead. And exactly a month to go till the Olympics. The athletes, they're ready. But what about the river that they're supposed to float down for the opening ceremony? We're going to tell you why the mayor says she's ready to take a dip in the waters of the Seine despite those pollution concerns. And getting nothing and liking it. People trying to go as long as they can without buying anything. The no-spend trend is tonight's original later on in the show. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin in for Hallie tonight. A massive mistake rippling across this country after a document related to a major Supreme Court case seems to have been accidentally posted online. The big question tonight, could emergency abortions in Idaho actually be safe? According to the document obtained by Bloomberg Law, it seems like that's the way the justices are leaning, meaning ER docs in Idaho would be allowed to perform emergency abortions when a pregnant patient's health is at serious risk, at least temporarily. That's because the court appears to be dismissing an appeal on this issue brought by Idaho officials, which would allow a lower court ruling in favor of the Biden administration to go back into effect. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson writing in the document, according to Bloomberg, that, quote, today's decision is not a victory for pregnant patients in Idaho. It is a delay. It's important to note here, though, we don't know if this document is a draft decision or the actual decision. It could also be neither of those. A spokeswoman for the Supreme Court confirming that a document was, quote, inadvertently and briefly uploaded to the court website. But reproductive rights advocates like the president of Planned Parenthood already reacting to this potential ruling, saying, quote, this. Any decision that falls short of guaranteeing patients' access to abortion care in emergencies would be catastrophic. No comment from the White House, though. An official saying they do not plan on making a statement until a decision is formally released by the court. And we cannot stress enough here how rare this type of thing is, yet somehow not completely unprecedented. Let's take a step back, right? 2022, a draft opinion on overturning Roe got leaked in a case that would eventually dramatically change the entire country's abortion landscape. I want to bring in Laura Jarrett now to talk more about this. How does this even happen?
It's baffling. It's truly extraordinary. Other than the Dobbs decision, which was different, right? That was an intentional leak as far as we understand it.
From what we know.
We've never seen anything like this. You never even get a hint, a whiff of what the Supreme Court is going to do. So to have something like this where the call is coming from inside the House, the publications unit, which is the unit that actually gets the draft so that it can format it and make it look pretty. If you look at what Bloomberg posted, it's just sort of the raw text file. Right. It's not sort of formatted in the way that you typically see a Supreme Court opinion. That was probably the first thing that tipped them off to the fact, oh, we shouldn't have gotten this. And we should mention, quickly removed it from the website. I have been refreshing that website all morning and didn't even catch it.
See it, but they did.
But they did, and they got it. And the court has all but acknowledged it was legit. It's not like a deep fake. It's not something that was fake. It was a real document. It's just not clear how far along it was. But typically, when it goes to the publications unit, it's almost final.
So this was, okay, let's say this draft decision, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, they'd be punting this case.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
and it may be the only way that they could get the votes to come out in the way that allows women to get emergency care without explicitly condoning the federal government's position, right? The federal government's position would be quite broad and would apply in many states other than just Idaho.
That but women require emergency care.
Exactly.
Their health is at risk.
Exactly. And what Idaho's saying, no, you don't get emergency care unless someone's basically on the verge of death and someone's going to die. Then you can get an emergency abortion.
But basically the federal government is saying, listen, sepsis is really serious. And if
Yes.
you're on the verge of getting sepsis, then you require an abortion.
And that's the conflict between federal and state law. Now, Idaho, we should mention, has sort of backed off its position and said, well, if it's sepsis, if it's premature rupture, all of those things, then you can get an abortion. But they've come they've come a long way, and their positions have changed. And it's one of the reasons you see Justice Barrett and Justice Kavanaugh saying, you know what, this dispute seems unsettled. Everyone's changing their positions. Let's send it back down to the lower court and let them hash it out.
Okay, but how does this affect other kind of pending legal actions that are happening in other states?
It leaves people in limbo. It leaves them with a lot of...
And by the way, probably doctors as well saying, okay, what do I do now?
So many doctors we talk to, even doctors in Idaho that we talk to, say, look, I could lose my medical license. I could be thrown in prison. There's criminal penalties if doctors violate this law. It's quite serious for them. And so they're saying we need clear direction here because we don't know what we're supposed to do. We lose our federal funding if we don't comply with federal law, and we wind up in jail if we don't comply with Idaho law. And so they're feeling like they're in a bind right now.
Do you think we're going to actually get this decision maybe tomorrow or 100%. Friday?
They now have to put it out because we've now seen it, and we've seen where they land on it. And we should mention this opinion, however it lands, this language is strong. The justices are coming at each other left and right with barbs, and so they are clearly still deeply divided on the issue of abortion.
Laura Jarrett, refreshing constantly at 10 a.m. every day.
Tomorrow, Friday, every day.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right, so we're just about 24 hours away or so from the very first and unprecedented debate between a former president and a current one, with President Biden and Donald Trump set to face off tomorrow night for the first time since 2020 in a likely showdown. A majority of Americans, by the way, they're going to watch this thing. Republican surrogates for the Biden camp taking a hard line in just the last couple of hours in Atlanta.
It is your time to do the right thing. Don't give Donald Trump 4 more years to continue to destroy this country.
I want to make sure that Republicans particularly understand you don't have to agree with everything Joe Biden says, but this is about defending the greatest country in the world.
And while there's so much attention on what fireworks could come out of this debate stage, there's also a lot of focus right now on Donald Trump's VP pick. 4 sources that are familiar telling our team the former president could, key word here, announce his running mate really any minute now, possibly even before this debate. And at least one of his 3 possible picks, making it his position pretty clear here.
I think they reached out to a lot of people. I'm among them, and that basically said, hey, send us some information. My best guess is they're looking at me, and they're looking at a lot of other people too, and they'll ask me if they ask me. And if they don't, that's fine. I'm human, right? And so when you know this thing's a possibility, if it doesn't happen, there's certainly going to be a little bit of disappointment.
J.D. Vance there, by the way, former Never Trumper. Want to bring in Vaughn Hilliard from Atlanta for us to talk more about this. Let's start there with this possible VP pick. I know they're kind of upping the timeline, the possibility of revealing the VP pick even before the former president takes the debate stage. Why? What are the calculations? What are the predictions on who he's going to pick?
Right, Yasmin, for months now, Donald Trump has suggested that he would make this announcement closer to the time of the start of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, if not when he gets there from the convention floor, which is slated to start on July 15th. This is a little bit different timeline, and multiple sources telling NBC News that he could make the decision here at any point, potentially before he even gets here to Atlanta tomorrow night for the debate against President Biden. And so this is really where it comes down to these main sort of VP finalists, right? You have the likes of North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, potentially Florida Senator Marco Rubio. At the same time, look, Donald Trump has not explicitly said himself that he has narrowed this list of candidates down, so you could still potentially have somebody like its Secretary Ben Carson or a New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. We know that he's looking for somebody who is loyal. Of course, his former Vice President Mike Pence is not in the running to stick around for what would be a second Trump administration. But this is where a lot is on the line, not only in the debate, but also this potential announcement of a VP pick, Yasmin.
Let's talk debate. Let's talk debate prep. Let's talk about the president first. Posted up what seems to be at Camp David. Our reporting suggesting he's actually going to come out swinging here, try to trigger the former president on that debate stage. What may that look like?
Yeah, look, the two men are taking very different approaches. Joe Biden is taking the much more traditional approach, and one that is what Donald Trump, we should note, did in 2016 and 2020, and that is having mock debate performances. And that includes, we're told, our Monica Alba reporting that yesterday as well as today, he is standing behind lecterns with lighting that is supposed to be sort of similar to what he should expect on stage here in Atlanta in the debate tomorrow night. And so for Joe Biden, this is taking questions and going toe-to-toe with Bob Bauer, who is his personal attorney, who is playing the part of Donald Trump. And this is going to be interesting tomorrow night. The microphones are going to be turned off for the individual whose time is not up. And so as soon as somebody hits their time limit, their microphone goes off. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who just last night said himself that he is not doing any mock debate prep, that he spent his life preparing for this moment. Those were his own words, and that he doesn't need to be stuck in a room for 2 days or a week to prepare for this. Of course, that is different than what he did in 2016, 2020, but We'll see tomorrow night how the prep for these two men ultimately plays out.
By the way, those microphones being turned off, a result of one of the last times they debated with Chris Wallace as moderator, in which it really turned into some melee. And when they weren't turning those mics off, and there were a lot of folks speaking over one another, or the two of them speaking over one another on that debate stage. Let's talk voters. On both sides, this is going to be watched by a lot of folks. It could really kind of help decide, especially for those undecided voters, which way they are going to swing. What are you hearing from them?
Right. Look, if you look at the polling that just came out, a majority of Americans indicate that they will tune in some capacity, either live or by watching clips afterward, into the debate. This is a moment that has not happened since the two men did it 4 years ago, and there's a lot of question marks about exactly how these two men will perform, especially on the stage with each other. And, there's just one gentleman I talked to earlier today here in Atlanta who told me that he voted for Joe Biden in 2020. At this point in time, doesn't intend to vote in the election for either candidate yet. When I said, well, are you going to tune into the debate? He goes, oh, yeah, I'm planning to do that. So I said, so there's a chance you may actually decide to go and vote. And he said, I guess, yeah, there's a chance. That's why I'm tuning in. So I think there's going to be a lot of folks, especially those who were on the fence about how they were going to vote in 2020, that may use this as a barometer on the next 4 months and how they ultimately decide to go come November.
Thank you, Vaughn. I appreciate it. By the way, you can watch the debate hosted by CNN and our special pre- and post-debate coverage starting 7 p.m. Eastern right here on NBC News Now. I'm taking you to the Midwest now, where that flooding that we've been telling you about is still a major threat and now another big issue. We've got tornadoes. 24 rivers in the region are in a flood stage, and unfortunately more rain is on the way this week in some of the hardest hit areas. The bad news, even a little rain could cause the rivers to rise fast, and then cause these flash floods in communities still grappling with the aftermath of those first round of floods. And it's coming as that dam in Minnesota, it's still on the verge of failing. Take a look at this, a house teetering on the edge of the Blue Earth River near the dam, partially collapsing into the water. Imagine if that was your home, essentially splitting into half. But there are very different scenes happening out west, as what started as a small wildfire in Oregon is now spreading fast near a popular vacation spot there, charring thousands of acres, triggering evacuations there as well. Want to get to our team covering all of this. We got Bill Cairns with us, but we want to start with Jesse Kirsch, who's on the ground for us in South Dakota. Jesse, let's start with some relief, some assistance, some help, right? We know the president pledging support to Minnesota, Iowa as well. What about everyone else in the region where you are, for instance, amidst all this wild weather?
Yes, so Yasmin, there are officials on the ground. State troopers have this area blocked off, and you can see behind me what's left of one of the homes along the edge of this lake, and just gives you an idea of how the grass underneath it has caved in, the roof has caved in. You can see the wall peeling aside on this brick home, and this is just one of the structures that has been devastated in this community in North Sioux City, South Dakota. We spoke with some people, some of whom have been able to get back inside and collect belongings. Others say they still are not being allowed into their homes to see what may be left. I spoke with a woman a short time ago who described going into her home and trying to recover her belongings. Here's part of what she shared with us about that experience.
I have a tri-level house, so the 2 lower levels are wrecked, full of mud, gross, stinks to high heaven, no power, so everything we had in freezers, refrigerators is rotten. I saw my life is gone, and in my home. We could only grab what we could carry out, so it isn't much.
And again, that's someone who was able to get into their property, but others are still trying to get back inside to see what might be salvageable from their properties, Yasmin.
All right, Jesse Kirsch for us. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. Want to get to Bill Cairns now, who's standing by for us at the weather wall. Listen, you've got more and more and more, right, on top of all of what we've already seen. You got this storm that rolled through the south overnight. You got this fresh batch of rain on the way for the Midwest as well. Walk us through it, Bill.
All right, so we still have a lot of our rivers that are in major flood stage. A lot of them have crest, but a few are still waiting for their crest. Crest means that's where the highest the river level will be, and that's where the worst damage will be, and then it goes down. And of course, if it rains hard, the rivers can quickly go back up. So anywhere you see these purple dots, southern Minnesota, Minneapolis, Mankato, all the way down to the northern portions here of Iowa, we still have many rivers that are in major flood stage. Now, this is the rainfall forecast for the next 3 days. Anywhere in green is a ½ inch to a ¼ inch. We can deal with that. We don't want to get the really heavy stuff, the thunderstorms. That's possible on Friday, but it looks very isolated. So at this hour, the regions that we're most concerned with, this is where all the flooding is. There's nothing going on. We're dry, beautiful sunshine. That's great. Thunderstorms in Mississippi, chance of isolated severe storms in areas of Alabama. And then all of these storms are heading to the east. In central Pennsylvania, Williamsport, home of the Little League World Series, some severe thunderstorms right now. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, severe storms are about to arrive for you. This will all be over the I-95 corridor as we go from about 8 p.m. to about midnight tonight. So a lot of airport delays are expected, isolated cases of severe winds. Then tomorrow, we push it back towards the middle of the country, severe storms in the Dakotas into Nebraska, and then this line will head through the flood zone late Thursday night and then Friday, and there is an isolated chance of some severe storms. So with those hit-and-miss storms, Yasmin, we just need them to avoid that flood region, and then hopefully I think we should be in the clear as the rivers really over the weekend will quickly start to recede.
So with that, obviously coupled with the heat that we're seeing across the country, really, but out west, we're now seeing these wildfires. You got Oregon, California as well. What is this kind of setting up for us ahead with this wildfire season?
This June has been extremely active, a lot more active than we had last year and even the couple of years before that. And what we're seeing is a lot of these little fires are quickly, growing. And we don't even have a lot of heat alerts in the way. All the heat alerts are in Texas, Oklahoma, and in the east. We're just dry. It's the dry season in California. And if we do get thunderstorms, usually they're dry-based storms with lightning, and that's what causes these new fires. So that happened this past weekend, and now some of those little fires are flaring up, and then they're starting to grow. And so that's when you start to worry as we go further into the season, as everything dries out even more, that's when the fire season could spread. So last year, Yasmin, we had a very, very, we didn't have a lot of big fires last year. We kind of got lucky. The years before that were horrific. And so now we're starting to think maybe last year, that wasn't the reality. Unfortunately, we could be in for another bad one. I
could give you a real-time heat alert, which is walk outside here in New York City, and it is really hot. That's my heat alert for this moment in time. Bill Cairns for us. Thanks. Appreciate it. We got some breaking news, everybody, that we're following an attempted military coup feared in Bolivia right now. Armed vehicles ramming into the government palace there. The country's president himself denouncing the whole thing, saying just in the last couple of minutes he's standing firm in a really tense situation going down literally right now. You can see some of these stunning images coming out of there. We're going to have much more coming up for you in our next hour as we follow what is happening there on the ground in Bolivia. Emotions running high after a stunning twist inside an Illinois courtroom when the accused Highland Park parade mass shooter rejected a plea deal that prosecutors thought that he would take. It would have put him in prison for life. Now he is scheduled to go to trial in February. Here is the reaction from one of the victims' family members.
All I wanted was to be able to fully grieve my mom without the looming trial, knowing that he was going to spend the rest of his life in jail. He is evil and manipulative and brought us here today probably knowing what he was going to do.
No comment on why the suspect changed his mind so abruptly, but it's coming a little over a week before the 2-year anniversary of this mass shooting. Remember, it was during a 4th of July parade where these 7 people were killed and nearly 50 others were hurt. Kathy Park joining us now with more on this. Pretty stunning stuff, obviously shocking to the family members of those victims. They're unbelievable as to what they've had to go through so far, even in just in the last 2 years. Take us inside that courtroom, Kathy, if you will, and what happened?
Yeah, Yasmin, you summed it up right there. It really was a stunning turn of events this morning with this reversal. And going into this hearing, Robert Crino III, the suspect in the Highland Park shooting, was facing a number of charges, including attempted murder, aggravated battery. And initially, he pleaded not guilty to those crimes. But according to this plea deal, a lot of those charges would have been dismissed. He still would have faced life in prison, but ultimately,
It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with Kathy. We are going to try and get her back because it is an important story, certainly, to follow, considering the victims, the lives that were lost, the family members that are still very much grieving. So when we get her back, we will bring it to you. Want to move on here to an entire chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club arrested as part of a kidnapping, robbery, and assault probe. We are talking 5 active members of the Bakersfield Hells Angels, including the group's president and vice president, plus 2 members of an affiliate club. Law enforcement seizing around 25 firearms, ammunition, multiple high-capacity magazines, and gang affiliate paraphernalia. Want to bring in Morgan Chesky, who is on this for us. Morgan, what charges are these men facing? What do we know about this investigation?
Yeah, Yasmin, the question of charges here is somewhat fluid as the members of the club have not been formally charged just yet, but law enforcement officials do tell us that the litany of potential crimes here include kidnapping, robbery, making criminal threats, false imprisonment, assault with a firearm, participation in a criminal street gang, criminal conspiracy, intimidating a witness or victim, and elder abuse. Now, we've also learned one of the 7 suspects, John Vaughn, was actually already in custody as a result of other charges. But all of these men are said to be from Bakersfield, California, that specific chapter. Authorities have identified those men as Ricardo Alvarez, Armando Villaseñor, Joseph Soto Sr., Joseph Soto Jr., Joshua Savala, and John Seeger. And new photos in tonight, Yasmin, show some of the club paraphernalia that authorities seized. In fact, you can see one photo denoting the group Sons of Hell. That's the affiliate club to the Hells Angels here. Other images show signage and club patches signifying the membership into this Bakersfield chapter. All of it just part of this really significant seizure that includes more than 24 firearms. And important context, federal charges could be coming, Yasmin, but at this point, it is still too early to tell.
We can't talk about this, obviously, Morgan, without talking about the pretty controversial history that the Hells Angels have.
Of course. Yeah, certainly one of the most recognizable motorcycle gangs in the country, if not the world here, Yasmin. And their history actually goes back nearly 80 years when they were founded in Fontana, California. That followed World War II. The DOJ officially designates the group as a motorcycle gang and criminal enterprise, alleging the Angels have long been involved in trafficking drugs and firearms. You may know this, but one of the gang's most infamous moments came back in 1969 when the Angels were actually hired to work security at a concert at California's Altamont Speedway. The show, however, ended up in a deadly brawl with 4 people being killed, among them an 18-year-old woman who had a gun that a club member stabbed to death. All of this happening as the Rolling Stones played on totally unaware. More recently, though, the group was tied to what's known as the River Run Riot. That was a clash with the rival gang, the Mongols, happening back in 2002 at Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. That left 3 people dead and multiple people injured, Yasmin. But in this specific case, still too early to tell, again, what other charges could be coming at a higher federal level here.
Morgan Chesky for us. Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate it. Coming up, everybody, what Paris's mayor is telling NBC News about security at the Olympics. We are live there 1 month before the Olympic Games. Plus, why Paris Hilton testified before Congress today. We'll be right back. One soccer star left off of the U.S. women's national team for the Paris Olympics. Now she's reacting, coming up in our 5 things. Up first, though, to Capitol Hill now, where an unlikely crusader testified today. We're talking about Paris Hilton, who spoke in front of a House panel about child welfare programs. Hilton called for change to the programs, sharing her experience with the abuse that she says she suffered while she was in youth treatment facilities.
I was force-fed medications and sexually abused by the staff. I was violently restrained and dragged down hallways, stripped naked, and thrown into solitary confinement.
Remember, this is not Hilton's first congressional rodeo. She talked about this before becoming a huge advocate the last few years for better protections for kids in these facilities, even backing a bill to create better reporting standards for what's known as, quote, the troubled teen industry. I want to get to our congressional reporter, Scott Wong, now to talk more about this. Talk us through first, Scott, what more we heard from Paris Hilton, and where do these proposed changes to the system, where do they go from here? How are they implemented?
Hey, Yasmin. Yeah, emotional and graphic testimony from Paris Hilton today. She called on Congress to basically crack down on these facilities from, restraining these youth, putting them in seclusion. She also really emphasized a focus on vulnerable children, those with disabilities, those facing mental health issues, those in foster care. Take a listen.
These facilities treat foster youth, kids in the juvenile justice system, youth with disabilities, and youth with mental health issues. I think all the agencies must work together to address the abuse and neglect that is happening, and we can't fix the issue if we don't look at it as a whole.
And now she is, trying to generate some momentum here on Capitol Hill to reauthorize this federal program known as Title 4B. It basically provides oversight for these types of youth treatment facilities. It had not been reformed since 2008. It expired in 2021. And so for these last several years now, these facilities have really been facing no oversight.
How much influence does someone like Paris Hilton have in getting a bill passed?
Well, you and I know her from our generation as a reality TV star. Yeah. Certainly, she continues to be a huge social media presence. She, is an absolute rock star, even up here on Capitol Hill. And so bringing that star power to this issue, she generates a ton of attention. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are now aware of this issue in this crisis in these types of facilities. And now there's a real concerted effort to try to get something done. I talked to the chairman of Ways and Means just a few minutes ago, Jason Smith of Missouri. He said he called Paris Hilton brave. He said that she has shown a light on this issue for a large group of Americans who had never heard of this issue before. And he hopes that she has generated momentum for his committee now to reauthorize these reforms and this oversight of these teen facilities sometime this summer. This committee has worked on a bipartisan basis in the past. There's a pretty good chance it will be able to do so again, especially with the backing of Paris Hilton.
Well, former reality TV stars seem to have a lot of power in government these days. Scott Wong for us. Thank you. Appreciate it. Want to get you over to the 5 things our team thinks that you should know about tonight. At number 1, a law enforcement source telling NBC News that Matthew Perry's ketamine suppliers could face charges. Remember, Matthew Perry died back in October from what officials said was the acute effects of ketamine. The source is saying the federal investigation is ongoing and there is no immediate action. Number 2, the FDA saying a top bakery needs to stop using labels that say its products contain allergens like sesame or tree nuts when they actually do not. It's the company behind brands like Entenmann's, Sara Lee, and Thomas's. The FDA saying the products are quote-unquote misbranded and that labeling is not a substitute for trying to prevent cross-contamination. Number 3, a union representing Hollywood film and TV crews came to a tentative deal with studios, meaning we're probably not going to see a strike. The union telling members that it includes pay hikes and AI protections. Members still have to vote on that deal. At number 4, take a look at this. A sign recently put up on I-95. This is what happened. It misspelled, I should say, as I just missaid, Central Philadelphia, swapping the T and the R. It's now fixed, but You can see the correct spelling when you go past that sign, but that's kind of tough. We all make typos, but when it's on a highway sign, that's a little rough. And there you see the picture there. Number 5, the U.S. women's soccer team announcing its roster for the Olympics, and superstar Alex Morgan's not on it. Morgan says she's, quote, disappointed, but it's still going to cheer the team on. It's a new era for the team. The group going is way younger than in past years, and the head coach just began. We are officially, everybody, 1 month away from the start of the Paris Olympics. And with millions of fans set to flood the city of lights, there are still some questions hanging over the final preps, like, will the Seine River be clean enough to hold swimming events? And can the French government properly secure the games from the threats? NBC's Keir Simmons sat down with the mayor of Paris today to talk all about it and joins us now with more on that. Let's start with the river question, Keir, if we can. The mayor actually was supposed to swim in the Seine on Monday to kind of prove how clean it was. She had to postpone it, it seems. Why was that? Is she still going to do it?
Well, Mayor Anne Hidalgo says that she will do it next month. She's a rare example, Yasmin, actually, of a politician who was there at the beginning of an Olympic idea and is still here to see it through. And swimming in the Seine was something that she really loved the idea of. She's a socialist. She likes the idea of opening up the city to people. There are those Parisians who are already complaining that many of it's shut down because so many areas, so many icons are being used as Olympic venues. But will the Seine be ready as a venue? I asked her.
Swimming in the Seine was your idea?
Yeah. Yes, it was my idea.
You're pleased you did it? Or
yes, I will swim in the River Seine. Not now because the weather is not so well in Paris, but also because we have election.
Everyone's worried that it's not ready. You say,
yes, it's ready.
You say, je ne regrette rien?
It's ready, it's ready.
Now, honestly, right now, it doesn't look ready. It does look brown. It's clearly the waters are high. Parisians say the summer comes in and it cools, it drops, it gets calmer. We certainly hope so in a month's time. Again, the mayor there says she's confident. Other Paris officials tell me, too, that they believe it, but that's the way it will work.
We will see it when it happens. Of course, all eyes are going to be on that Olympics, Keir.
Yes, we will.
Yes, yes, we certainly will. I want to talk about potential threats, right? We remember all what happened during the Atlanta Olympics in Centennial Park and the bombing there. What are they doing to prepare for potential threats to the Paris Olympics?
Throwing everything at it is the honest answer. Bringing in extra security soldiers, bringing in help from abroad. The mayor told me they're getting a lot of help from the US, a lot of intelligence. And the way that she answered, I think, really reflects that. What she wanted to say was that we are doing everything. Take a listen.
We've been identifying dangerous individuals, putting them apart. In Paris, there are also special units, like for all kind of games, all Olympic games. We also have militaries. The army has come over Paris. They have camps in the Vincennes forest. And there is private security. So as you see, there is a lot of attention. We're really following everything to ban all risk of attack.
I don't know if you can hear, Yasmin, but there is a kind of a party atmosphere here on the Trocadero where we are in front of the beautiful Eiffel Tower. So certainly the French, Parisians, tourists coming here seem very relaxed. You know, another aspect that might be worth just keeping an eye on is countries that are opposed to, if you like, France. Countries like Russia, countries like Iran, trying to disrupt the games through cyber and things like that. It's not just a security threat. There are other threats. In my experience, though, once the opening ceremony gets underway, party starts.
I have an idea, Keir, for your next segment, possibly tomorrow. Take a swim in the Seine, and then come back to us and let us know how it goes. Yes. Keir Simmons for us.
Do I have to say yes now?
Let us know. Let the desk know. Let the news desk know.
Okay, good, thank you.
The assignment desk. They're on it for you. Keir Simmons, thank you. When we come back, troops are storming the presidential palace in Bolivia in an apparent coup attempt right now. You're seeing new video of it here. We're following this story very closely. We're going to bring you more in our next hour. And then a major concession in Kenya, that country's president scrapping a proposed tax hike that sparked violent protests. Why the walk back is happening now. Plus, an update on the story that we've been following, what we're learning about charges against people accused of trying to bribe a juror in a federal trial. Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich finally on trial today, 15 months after his arrest in Russia. The latest on the push to get him out coming up in a minute. Up first, though, NBC covers hundreds of stories every day. And because it's tough to read, to watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment that we call The Local. From our Midwest Bureau, prosecutors charging 5 people today with trying to bribe a juror in a federal fraud trial in Minnesota. And 3 of them were defendants in the trial. You'll remember the juror was given a bag with like $120,000 in cash. Officials saying there was this plan for the juror to convince other jurors to vote to acquit. Out of our Western Bureau, a Tesla in Washington slammed into a restaurant's patio after it collided with another vehicle. The restaurant saying the Tesla almost hit someone on the patio. Luckily, nobody got hurt. The driver was cited for reckless driving and driving too fast. Police do not think the Tesla was in self-driving mode. And from our Southern Bureau, a reporter from our affiliate in North Carolina says she's lucky to be alive after a crowbar from a car in front of her smashed through her windshield. Look at that. You can see the glass just completely shattered. She says state troopers are trying to figure out who it belonged to. All right, Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter arrested in Russia more than a year ago in a closed-door courtroom today for the start of the spying trial against him. He is facing espionage charges that both he, the Wall Street Journal, and the U.S. government strongly deny. You can see him there in the defendant's cage. His head is shaved, a yellow padlock, locking him in. The Wall Street Journal now calling the whole thing a sham with bogus charges. And if convicted, he faces up to 2 decades in prison. I want to bring in Josh Letterman, who's got more on this. It's a closed-door trial, Josh. What do we know about what's going down in that courtroom today and what could come next here? Because he has so few legal protections inside Russia.
That's right. Essentially no legal protections. And because it's closed door, we have almost no idea what is going on in that courtroom. We know that the next hearing will be about 6 weeks from now. And we know, based on what prosecutors have filed, that the accusation centers on the notion that the CIA ordered him and instructed Evan Gershkovich to travel to Yekaterinburg, which is where this trial is taking place, to obtain secret information about a massive Russian tank factory. That's about all that Russia has released. And as you pointed out, no actual evidence, but we don't know what actual the details of what is happening inside the courtroom, and we probably will not have any substantive update until there is potentially a verdict and a sentencing. One major piece of information we got today was just the fact that his head had been shaved and his appearance. And I want you to hear what the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, his employer, had to say about that. Take a listen.
His head was shaven not by choice. And so that, I think, all fits this Russian narrative of making him look like a prisoner, making him look like someone who committed a crime.
Obviously, his family is hoping that this trial is not going to end in a conviction, Yaz, but statistically, it's not looking good. Less than 1% of criminal trials in Russia's judicial system end in an acquittal. And when it comes to espionage cases like this, it's essentially unheard of. And so that is why the U.S. government is signaling they think this is a sham trial. They think that the decision has already been made. The
possibility of him being released, it's even being politicized here at home. You got this really contentious, presidential election that we're dealing with. The former president saying today himself that he'd actually get Gershkovich out if he wins. What do we know about kind of any backdoor conversations that are being had for his release with the Biden administration?
Well, I thought it was interesting that the State Department today, in their comments on this, suggested that this might be linked in some way, that they might be seeking one deal that would bring home both Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, who is a former U.S. Marine, also in Russian custody, charged with espionage. And when it comes to the Russian side, what they could get out of a potential prisoner swap, we've heard earlier this year from President Putin, who hinted that he might be interested in getting back a Russian prisoner named Vadim Krasikov, who is imprisoned in Germany on a murder charge. That would be complicated because the U.S. doesn't have him in custody to release. But that appears to be potentially the contours of a deal if there is one to be reached here.
Josh Lemon for us. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. In a surprising twist, folks, Kenya's president is planning tonight to get rid of the proposed tax hike that sparked deadly protests for days around the country.
Listening keenly to the people of Kenya, who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign.
This is following these violent clashes we were talking about yesterday between police and protesters that left at least 23 people dead, according to a medic group. Protesters even breaching the country's parliament building in Nairobi, setting part of it on fire. You can see that here. NBC's Danielle Hamamjian has more on this.
The president went from absolute defiance to a major concession in less than 24 hours. He said the people had spoken, but they've been speaking for days now. So what changed? Pressure, not just domestic, but with the UN and the U.S. pushing for calm and condemning the violence, there likely was pressure coming from abroad as well. The Kenyan vice president today blaming intelligence services for, quote, giving the government poor advice. This was the biggest assault on the Kenyan government in decades. At the center of it all is this controversial tax plan that would have raised $2.7 billion. But in doing so, protesters say it would have made life even more unbearable, even more unaffordable when they're already struggling to make ends meet. The leader of the opposition today saying Kenya cannot afford to kill its children just because they are asking for food, jobs, and a listening ear. The president announced budget cuts to his own office, cutting on travel, hospitality, renovations. That won't add up to a whole lot, but this is all about optics for a man who was elected 2 years ago on a promise to stand up for the poor and who is now criticized for his lavish lifestyle. So where do things go from here? This is not over. The bill is rejected, yes, so it's a victory for the protesters, but they're also rejecting the president himself. They want him to resign. He said today he wants to start a dialogue with the young Kenyans. 80% of the population there is under the age of 35, but they want nothing to do with him. Some on social media are calling for a demonstration tomorrow to go ahead, demanding he step down. Yasmin?
Thank you so much to Danielle Hamamjian. Coming up, everybody, a new study getting at the question, are plant-based meats better for us than the real stuff? We're getting into those findings coming up next. All right, welcome back. A new report out today suggesting that plant-based alternatives may be healthier for the heart than meat, despite being ultra-processed. An analysis of previous studies found that risk factors for heart disease like total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, which is, by the way, the bad one, and body weight all improved when various animal-based meats were replaced with plant substitutes. I want to bring in Dr. Natalie Azar to talk more about this. So we have been kind of talking about this bad ultra-processed food for your health in general. But this report is essentially saying if you're comparing these meat alternatives, for instance, like Beyond Meat, like I eat a lot of that because I don't eat meat, I only eat fish, to meat, it's a better alternative?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I like the way this study was done. And of course, the reason that the study was done is that for years we've been telling people to eat less red meat, right? And so a lot of people have turned to these, different plant-based sort of options to get the same flavor, to get the same, sort of idea about eating meat. And what the study, in fact, did show was that there were a lot of these cardiovascular parameters that really did improve. What study has not been done, Yasmin, is comparing outcomes in people who eat red meat versus plant-based products. For example, does that, improvement in your HDL translate into a reduction in heart attack and stroke? We don't have that data.
Long-term outcomes.
Long-term, exactly.
Okay,
it's like
it.
we have okay, great, these metabolic things are changing.
Right,
exactly,
but down.
Exactly. But I think if you're talking about just sort of plant-based products in general and sort of this designation as ultra-processed, they're not all created equal. If you have an ultra-processed food that is extraordinarily high in sodium and saturated fat and really, really bad carbs.
Like certain potato chips.
Potato chips, perfect example. Or pour water into
I love
something.
A good chip.
Or I know, right? But everything in moderation, we said,
Yeah.
right? Or all you need to do is pour a little water in it and boom, you have dinner. That's probably not going to be that healthy, right?
Yeah.
But if you have something that's pea-based or soy-based and it just happens to look like a hamburger patty and maybe it's ultra-processed, it may not actually be as bad for you as the name would imply.
And we don't have that much time left, but I find this fascinating. Is it more about what this kind of processed food is made from?
Yes, it is. And so, some guidance for people is to actually look at how much sodium is in there, how much saturated fat is in there, what is the protein source, does it have gluten? You might be gluten sensitive. Are there artificial sweeteners? We try I tell all my patients to eat a whole food plant-based diet, but in the real world, we're all eating some amount of processed food. We have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't spend all day eating whole food.
Yeah, you need to have fun.
But that's what we want to go towards, right? Exactly. The nuts and legumes and fresh vegetables and fresh fruit, then you don't have to worry about how processed it is.
Right.
But I think the bottom line is that ultra-processed is not ultra bad all the time.
How do your patients react to that recommendation, Dr. Nath?
My patients are really, really they follow every single solitary thing that I tell them to do.
I bet they do. Thank you. Appreciate it. Still to come, everybody, the big online trend about buying nothing, how people are resisting the splurge in tonight's original. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. As we get new data this week showing rocky consumer confidence, it's not a shock that the high cost of living has people getting creative. Enter a new social media trend called, quote, the no spend challenge, when people go on a spending fast by not buying anything but the bare essentials. Instead, you're pocketing all that cash, saving it for a vacation, retirement, or paying off a debt. Vicki Nguyen has more.
No new clothes, books, makeup, home goods, nothing.
The latest trend catching fire on social media.
What if I spent nothing for the next 337 days?
It is a green day. We did not spend any money today.
The no spend trend, or so-called no buy challenge.
Tip number 1 is no window shopping whatsoever.
An online community gaining attention with millions of views on TikTok and a thriving Reddit community supporting those trying to resist the urge to splurge.
We spent at least $1,000 eating out every single month. This is why we're doing the no spend challenge for the month of June.
Anything that gets people to be more thoughtful about their spending is a good thing. If it comes from TikTok, that's fine.
Some vowing to go as long as a year, buying nothing but absolute essentials, foregoing clothes, gadgets, fancy vacations, and even dinners out.
The goal is to use up what I already have.
Others doing it 1 month at a time.
The pitfalls is that maybe it's just a flash in the pan, and you might do that for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but then when it's over, you start revenge spending.
It comes at an interesting economic moment, a pandemic-era spending boom that landed Americans with $1 trillion in credit card debt for the first time last year, with delinquencies now on the rise, and an economy that's leaving consumers with mixed emotions.
While the headline numbers tell you that unemployment is really low, the economy is still growing, the stock market's at or near record highs, what people feel personally is actually not that great. When they open their wallet to buy groceries, when they're filling up their gas tank, when they're paying their monthly bills.
Reports showing consumer confidence wavering as many Americans still feel the pinch of inflation on their wallets. Major retailers like Walgreens and Target slashing prices on everyday items, trying to lure shoppers back. But for these thrifty no spenders, it's the bigger ticket items that will have to wait.
Not shopping has allowed me to free up a lot of extra money, and any extra cash that I have, I take and I put towards my savings.
And Vicki Nguyen joining us now. I got to say, Vicki, I'm a spender. I'm a shopper, as my husband knows well. So this does not sound fun for me. But I know that there are some groups out there, kind of support groups, in a way that folks are actually turning to amidst this no-spend trend.
Yeah, the Buy Nothing groups. This started back in 2013 by two women, Lisa Clark and Rebecca Rockefeller, as a social experiment, Yasmin. They wanted to know, could we spend no money, help the environment, and get everything we need? Fast forward to now, we're talking about 10 million people who are part of 8,000 Buy Nothing groups across the world. And they just launched an app 2 years ago. And I'll tell you what, everybody who is a part of one of these groups, Yasmin, it could be you too, is obsessed. They say the magic happens when you put an ask out for something. Like you might be like, oh, you know what? I need a lacrosse stick for my kid.
Yeah.
And you'd be shocked at how many people have things that can help you in this circular economy. There's a lot of stuff out there, and some might argue there's enough stuff out there. And if you just ask in your community, not only are you getting, you're not spending money, there is no expectation of trading. This is just you ask, you get, and that's it. You're also building community because these are local groups. And so there are all these fringe benefits in addition to helping your wallet. The one thing I do want to say is when you are meeting up with a stranger for the first time, always bring a buddy, make sure someone knows where you're going. But more often than not, it's a great community builder.
Okay, I'll look into it. I promise. I swear. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. Vicki Wynn, thank you. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now. All right, we come on the air tonight with another bizarre day in the history of the Supreme Court after a document that could indicate which way it's leaning in a key abortion case was mistakenly posted. We're live with how it happened and then what comes next. Plus, most Americans say they're planning to watch tomorrow night's presidential debate. Our reporters are watching the last-minute preparations and see if former President Trump is going to name a running mate before he takes the stage. Then some breaking news as soldiers in Bolivia storm the presidential palace. We'll have a live report on the coup attempt that could throw the country into chaos. Then floods, fires, and fear. Millions facing dangerous conditions. We'll tell you about where it could be a scary night ahead and what law enforcement found when they arrested a whole chapter of the Hells Angels. That's coming up later on in the show. Hey, everybody, I'm Yasmin, in for Hallie tonight. A massive mistake rippling across this country after a document related to a big Supreme Court case seems to have been accidentally posted online. So the big question tonight, could emergency abortions in Idaho be safe? According to the document obtained by Bloomberg Law, it seems like that's the way the justices are leaning, meaning ER docs in Idaho would be allowed to perform emergency abortions when a pregnant patient's health is at serious risk, at least temporarily. That's because the court appears to be dismissing an appeal on this issue brought by Idaho officials, which would allow a lower court ruling in favor of the Biden administration to go back into effect. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, writing in this document, according to Bloomberg, that, quote, today's decision is not a victory for pregnant patients in Idaho. It is a delay. It's important to note here, though, we do not know if this document is a draft decision or the actual decision. It could also be neither. A spokeswoman for the Supreme Court confirming that a document was, quote, inadvertently and briefly uploaded to the court website. But reproductive rights advocates like the president of Planned Parenthood already reacting to the potential ruling, saying, quote, this, any decision that falls short of guaranteeing patients access to abortion care in emergencies would be catastrophic. No comment from the White House so far, and officials saying they do not plan on making a statement until a decision is formally released by the court. And we cannot stress enough how rare this type of thing is, yet somehow not completely unprecedented. Let's go back to 2022, a draft opinion on the overturn of Roe getting leaked in a case that would eventually dramatically change the entire country's abortion landscape and all those protests there as well. Yamiche Alcindor following this for us as well, and Denny Savalas joining us as a legal analyst. Yamiche, start us off, if you will. Talk us through how this all went down, how something like this even happens, and the ramifications of these mistakes, as they're saying, and or leaks, as we saw with the Dobbs decision, surrounding this issue of abortion.
Well, as you said, this is really a remarkable thing that you saw happen today, which is that Bloomberg Law says that this was posted, this document that we don't know if it's the final decision or a draft decision, was posted online inadvertently. As you said, the Supreme Court now is confirming to NBC News that this was posted essentially accidentally, and that this decision at least looks like it would be at least a temporary win for the Biden administration here. The ramifications of this are something that we really should dig into here, because as you said, this was rare. You had this sort of Supreme Court, the view of it being that these decisions, these opinions were sort of really under lock and key until the Supreme Court was completely ready to do that. 2 years ago, we saw that Dobbs decision really blow that up, with us learning that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned weeks before the Supreme Court officially did that. Now we have a similar situation here, though this is really a mistake. The other time, it felt like it was a leak. Not sure exactly what the motivation was there, and there was a whole investigation to try to figure out how that happened. In this case, it seems like the Supreme Court might know how this happened, because someone, who knows who, but someone accidentally put this online. But now, of course, you go back to the credibility of the Supreme Court. A lot of people questioning whether or not the Supreme Court is sort of being too politicized and now it looking like maybe messy. That being said, we're looking for a number of decisions, and we should put it up for folks what we're looking for. We're looking, of course, for this Idaho abortion case, but we're also waiting for Fisher v. U.S. that's dealing with January 6th and whether or not there's a charge there that could possibly be dismissed. And the big one we're looking for is the presidential immunity argument, with former President Trump saying he should be absolutely immune from criminal prosecution for any official acts that he did while in office. Of course, the special counsel Jack Smith arguing just the opposite there.
Yeah,
Yasmin.
And of course, we got 2 more decision days just this week, tomorrow, Friday as well, 10 a.m. when those decisions are in fact released. Can we stick with abortion for just a moment, because we know Democrats have kind of been honing in on this, right? It played well when it came to the midterm elections. We've got now two decisions from the Supreme Court in favor of abortion rights advocates, I should say, too. As Democrats, as they're looking for re-election of President Joe Biden, how are they taking this messaging going into this election, knowing how abortion resonates with voters and getting folks to turn out?
Well, Democrats are going to be leaning into these arguments and these rulings and saying that this was really temporary wins. If you look at the Mifepristone case, it was decided on standing. It wasn't really on the merits of the case. So the abortion pill is available for now, but another case, a separate case can come where someone does have standing. And on this issue, you saw the language from Ketanji Brown Jackson. She's looking at the map of the United States that we're putting up for people, with more than a dozen states having near total bans on abortion here, the abortion landscape changing since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And she's saying that really that the Supreme Court is kicking this down the road and delaying this, and not saying that EMTALA should trump Idaho's law and any other law that looks like this. So there are reproductive rights advocates that I've been talking to all day who say that this really isn't a win. A win would be the Supreme Court saying EMTALA trumps all these state laws, and that has not happened yet. So a lower court would still deal with it, Yasmin.
Yamiche, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's bring in Danny Savalos on set with me now to talk more about this. I mean, draft decision, of course, this thing was a mistake, as the court is saying, but nonetheless, I mean, from what we read, it seemed like they're punting this thing. They're not even really making a decision on it. They're really more punting it. How does this affect pending litigation across the country in other restrictive states when it comes to abortion care?
You could say that it doesn't, because it doesn't even really affect what's going on in Idaho yet. Because procedurally, this is one of those cases that gets really confusing, because it's a stay that's been appealed, and then another stay and a stay of the stay. And after a while, it's difficult to even know where you are procedurally with this case. But all the court has really done is not decided this case on the merits. They've sent it back down to be decided on the merits, concluding that it didn't belong in the Supreme Court in the first place. So if it says virtually nothing about abortion in Idaho, it says virtually nothing about the other states. Although I would point out that at least some of the language in there, at least from the justices like Kagan and the others in that concurrence, that draft concurrence, which, again, we don't know is final, but it seems to indicate that there are certainly at least some justices who would conclude that EMTALA, that federal law, does override Idaho state law. Whether that means they have a majority, that is yet another thing that remains to be seen.
Laura and I spoke last hour, and it's honestly just incredible to think that they would make such a huge mistake like this, right? But then you think back to the leak as well of the Dobbs decision. What does this do yet again? I mean, we talked about this a lot. The credibility of, right, the reputation of the Supreme Court when things like this happen with an issue that is so key to the electorate.
I remember when electronic filing came out. It was about 20 years ago. And since then, all lawyers who do it have horror stories about accidentally uploading things to the public record that they didn't mean to or that contained something really embarrassing.
But this is the
Me
Supreme
included.
Court.
And that's exactly right. So you don't see this kind of thing at the Supreme Court level. But that doesn't mean that with enough time and enough opinions and enough people who are fallible, that you're not going to get an error like this. And even the prior instance with the Dobbs decision, that wasn't really the same thing. There was allegedly or suspected some intent behind that leak. This instead looks to be, at least from everything I see so far, as a classic oops, I uploaded something to the electronic system that I shouldn't have done. The reality is, Yasmin, this happens all the time, every day. It just doesn't happen at the Supreme Court.
You didn't want to bring your daughter today?
No, that wasn't. She got a talking to for that one yesterday.
And hopefully a big hug and a kiss.
Yes.
If you weren't watching yesterday, Danny Zabalos was on our show as well, and his daughter just popped up right behind him towards the end of the segment. It was probably the best moment in the 2 hours of television that we were doing here.
Yes,
Danny,
but she has to stop doing it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. We are just about 24 hours away from the very first and unprecedented debate between a former president and a current one, with President Biden and Donald Trump set to face off tomorrow night for the first time since 2020 in a likely showdown a majority of Americans are going to watch. Republican surrogates for the Biden camp taking a hard line in just the last couple of hours in Atlanta.
It is your time to do the right thing. Don't give Donald Trump 4 more years to continue to destroy this country.
I want to make sure that Republicans particularly understand you don't have to agree with everything Joe Biden says, but this is about defending the greatest country in the world.
And while there's so much attention on what fireworks could come out on the debate stage, there's also a lot of focus right now on Donald Trump's VP hunt. 4 sources familiar telling our team the former president could, and keyword could here, announce his running mate really any moment now, possibly even before he gets on that stage, and at least one of his 3 possible picks, making his position very clear.
I think they reached out to a lot of people. I'm among them, and that basically said, hey, send us some information. My best guess is they're looking at me, and they're looking at a lot of other people too, and they'll ask me if they ask me. And if they don't, that's fine. I'm human, right? And so when you know this thing's a possibility, if it doesn't happen, there's certainly going to be a little bit of disappointment.
Gabe Gutierrez following every update for us from Atlanta. Gabe, good to talk to you. Let's talk about VP picks first, right? Just heard from J.D. Vance there, who at one point was a never-Trumper, possible VP pick now. And this kind of updated timeline, the possibility the former president may actually announce his VP pick before he takes that debate stage. Why, and what are the predictions here?
Oh, hi there, Yasmin. Well, we didn't hear about it today. And by the way, I mentioned J.D. Vance was once a never-Trumper. All the top contenders right now, Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and Doug Burgum, at one point in their lives have criticized Donald Trump. Of course, that's all changed now. But as you said, 4 people close to the situation say that there were high-level discussions, there have been high-level discussions within the Trump campaign on whether to move up the timeline to potentially as early as this week to make a splash. Now, that is a big question, whether it will happen before the debate. There's also a rally that the former President Trump is having on Friday. So at this point, it's all up in the air, but it is possible that it could happen as early as this week. Former President Trump had previously said that he would do it sometime around the convention in the middle of July.
So the president has been posted up at Camp David. He's prepping for this incredibly important debate. We are hearing from sources, from reporting as well, he's going to come out swinging, try to trigger the former president on that stage. How might he do that?
Well, look, President Biden is actually preparing for several different scenarios, right? We understand from people close to the preparations that the president is undergoing several mock debates, and he's preparing for which version of Donald Trump shows up. Former President Trump can be his usual bombastic self, but he can also perhaps be more reserved, more disciplined. And so the Biden team is also preparing for that eventuality. So the Biden campaign says that they want to draw a sharp contrast between the former president and President Biden. They, of course, plan to focus on what they have been over the last several months, reproductive rights and also threats to democracy, while the Trump team really plans to focus on some of the issues that he feels that he's strong on, such as inflation and the border and immigration.
Let's talk about the people that matter, the voters that are going to be casting their ballots come November, right? We got this new polling out. A lot of Americans are going to watch this thing. They're going to be watching this debate. Undecided voters, particularly important to both candidates here. What are we hearing from both sides when it comes to what they're going to be watching and listening for?
Yeah, that's right. We're looking at that AP polling right there, and you can see some plan to watch it live, others plan to watch clips later. But this is what both campaigns, especially the Biden campaign, has really been talking about for the last several months. They say that many Americans have yet to tune into this election, and the way they see it, they figure that once more Americans do so, they will start to see that contrast between President Biden and former President Trump. But Yasmin, I've been speaking with voters really across the country in several battleground states, specifically Michigan, though, and we spoke with so-called double haters, those voters that are not happy with either candidates, and they have a lot of frustrations here. They will be watching this debate to see not just which of the two candidates they'll choose, but whether or not they'll stay home, Yasmin.
Gabe Gutierrez. Thank you, Gabe. Good to see you. By the way, you can watch the debate hosted by CNN and our special pre- and post-debate coverage starting 7 p.m. Eastern right here on NBC News Now. Some breaking news just into us, everybody. Troops, armored vehicles now starting to pull back in a coup attempt in Bolivia going down as we speak. You're looking at this stunning video on the ground of soldiers storming the gates of the presidential palace, trying to overthrow the leadership there. The president asking citizens of the country to take to the streets to defend him. Look at this chaos, a fire burning on the streets in Bolivia, as the White House says it's closely monitoring the situation as it's unfolding. This story has been quickly developing, new information coming in literally by the minute. I want to go right to David Noriega, who's been following all of this for us. What else do we know here, David, as this has been developing over the last few hours or so?
Yeah, so just in less than an hour ago, the Bolivian press started reporting that the general behind this coup, this attempted coup, had left the Central Plaza in the capital, pulled back his troops. So this appears for now to have been an attempted but failed coup. The president, Luis Arce, has replaced most of the military high command. We basically, at this point, are waiting to see whether Zúñiga, the general, is going to regroup and try something again, or whether he's backing down for sure. He seems to be pretty isolated in this. Other major players on the Bolivian right are not supporting him. They're actually coming out and condemning the coup attempt. So it looks pretty likely that he kind of went out on a limb here, overplayed his hand, and this might be the end of it. But of course, as you said, this is developing.
Take us back for a moment, if you will, David, and talk us through how we got here.
Yeah, so there was a successful coup in Bolivia just 5 years ago in 2019 that deposed the still quite popular president at the time, Evo Morales, who is to this day kind of an icon of the Latin American left and sort of the center of gravity of Bolivian politics. He's back in the scene now, vying for the presidency next year, which is putting him kind of in a feud with the current president, who was once his ally and his successor. That has destabilized the government, kind of paralyzed it, prevented it from dealing with a pretty severe and deepening economic crisis, which is a big change. Under Morales' time in office, the Bolivian economy was actually pretty strong. The opposition hasn't marshaled anything coherent as far as a response to this, but this coup attempt is certainly an indication that these are turbulent times for this government, for the ruling Socialist Party, and they sort of, they need to right the ship if they want to avoid this turning into something bigger.
David Noriega for us. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Want to go to the Midwest now? The flooding that we've been talking about is still a major threat, and now another huge issue. You got tornadoes. 24 rivers in the region are in a flood stage, and unfortunately more rain is on the way this week in some of the hardest hit areas. The bad news, or the worst news, I should say, even a little rain could cause the rivers to rise fast and cause flash floods in communities still grappling with the aftermath of this first round of floods. And it's coming as that dam in Minnesota is still on the verge of failing. Take a look at this, a house teetering on the edge, just going down. On the Blue Earth River near the dam, partially collapsing into the water, essentially splitting in half. Imagine if that was your home. There are very different scenes happening out west, as what started as a small wildfire in Oregon is now spreading fast near a popular vacation spot there, charring thousands of acres, triggering evacuations as well. Want to get right to Jesse Kirsch, who's on the ground for us in South Dakota for us. Jesse, talk us through this, what folks are telling you about how they're even going to rebuild amidst all of this wild weather that they've been experiencing.
Well, Yasmin, behind me here, you can see on the outskirts of the area where we're allowed to be, the aftermath and the destruction that this flooding has caused. This is just one of the properties you can see behind us there that is caved in, collapsing on the side of this lake. And you can see that the earth is caving in as well. Just gives you an idea of the force of the water that came through here. And we've spoken with people, some who have been able to get back into their homes, others who have not. Here's what we heard from one resident earlier. So you, to this point, have not gotten back inside your home?
No, I haven't. I don't know what's left. I don't know what's there or whatever. There's a lot of valuables in there, and there's a lot of emotional values in there, and I can't get to it, and I don't know if it's safe. I don't know if it's there.
We spoke with a woman as well who said that she was able to get inside and get some of her belongings, but she says some items, including some family heirlooms, Yasmin, are now essentially lost. And that is just what we're seeing throughout this neighborhood and this community.
So incredibly tough to lose your home, your belongings amidst all of that. Jesse Kirsch, thank you. I want to go to Bill Cairns now as we're talking about weather here. But first, this emotions running high after a stunning twist inside an Illinois courtroom when the accused Highland Park parade mass shooter rejected a plea deal that prosecutors thought he'd take. It would have put him in prison for life. Now he's scheduled to go on trial in February. Here's the reaction from one of the victim's family members.
All I wanted was to be able to fully grieve my mom without the looming trial, knowing that he was going to spend the rest of his life in jail. He is evil and manipulative and brought us here today probably knowing what he was going to do.
So no comment on why the suspect changed his mind so abruptly, but it's coming a little over a week before the 2-year anniversary of the mass shooting. Remember, it was during a 4th of July parade where these 7 people died and nearly 50 people were hurt. Kathy Park is joining us now with more on this. What happened inside that courtroom? It seems as if family members of the victims were completely caught off guard. Walk us through it.
Yeah, Yasmin, so it certainly was a stunning turn of events this morning as the hearing got underway. And going into this hearing, Robert Crimo III, the suspect in the Highland Park shooting, he was facing a number of charges, attempted murder, aggravated battery, and he initially pleaded not guilty to all those crimes. And there was a plea deal going into this, and the plea deal would essentially dismiss the majority of those charges, but he was still looking at life in prison. And shortly as the hearing got underway, the judge asked him, look, did you have discussions with your lawyer? And Robert Crimo III, he was silent. And there was a point when the judge had to recess briefly so that he could talk to his lawyers. They came back. And that is when he ultimately said no to the plea deal. And as you can imagine, Yasmin, these family members who packed the courtroom today, emotions were running high. And they wanted some closure today, but they didn't get it. Take a listen.
It was emotional. I think you felt more of that emotion when they asked him if he agreed, and he just looked around at his family, and that's when I knew, like, he's not going to take this plea.
And Yasmin, we should point out that dozens of family members, they were preparing for a possible sentencing today, and they had victim impact statements ready to go. But now that is on hold. There is a statement that the legal team representing dozens of the victims and survivors, they released a statement saying, quote, today's calculated decision by Robert Crimo III to reject a plea deal in open court was an intentional effort to continue his personal reign of terror and to re-traumatize those who were injured or lost loved ones in the Highland Park 4th of July mass shooting 2 years ago. Prosecutors also offered a brief comment after today's court proceedings, saying that this is still an active case. They say that they will continue to support the victims. But as far as what's next, Yasmin, there is another hearing later on this summer, but then we're going to be keeping our eyes on February of next year. That is when the trial will move forward. But also worth noting that next week, July 4th, just a couple of days away, we are told that Highland Park will be hosting another July 4th parade. This is the first one since the tragedy in 2022.
Wow.
Yasmin.
Kathy, thank you. I appreciate it. An entire chapter of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club arrested as part of a kidnapping, robbery, and assault probe. We are talking 5 active members of the Bakersfield Hells Angels, including the group's president and vice president, plus 2 members of an affiliate club. Law enforcement seizing around 25 firearms, ammunition, multiple high-capacity magazines, and gang affiliate paraphernalia. Morgan Chesky joining us now. Morgan, what charges are these men facing? What do we know about this investigation?
Yeah, Yasmin, the question of charges here is somewhat fluid as the members of the club have not been formally charged just yet. But law enforcement officials do tell us that the litany of potential crimes here include kidnapping, robbery, making criminal threats, false imprisonment, assault with a firearm, participation in a criminal street gang, criminal conspiracy, intimidating a witness or victim, and elder abuse. Now, we've also learned one of the 7 suspects, John Vaughn, was actually already in custody as a result of other charges. But all of these men are said to be from Bakersfield, California, that specific chapter. Authorities have identified those men as Ricardo Alvarez, Armando Villasenor, Joseph Soto Sr., Joseph Soto Jr., Joshua Zavala, and John Seeger. And new photos in tonight, Yasmin, show some of the club paraphernalia that authorities seized. In fact, you can see one photo denoting the group Sons of Hell. That's the affiliate club to the Hells Angels here. Other images show signage and club patches signifying the membership into this Bakersfield chapter. All of it just part of this really significant seizure that includes more than 24 firearms. And important context, federal charges could be coming, Yasmin. But at this point, it is still too early to tell.
We can't talk about this, obviously, Morgan, without talking about the pretty controversial history that the Hells Angels have.
Of course. Yeah, certainly one of the most recognizable motorcycle gangs in the country, if not the world here, Yasmin. And their history actually goes back nearly 80 years when they were founded in Fontana, California. That followed World War II. The DOJ officially designates the group as a motorcycle gang and criminal enterprise, alleging the Angels have long been involved in trafficking drugs and firearms. You may know this, but one of the gang's most infamous moments came back in 1969 when the Angels were actually hired to work security at a concert at California's Altamont Speedway. The show, however, ended up in a deadly brawl with 4 people being killed, among them an 18-year-old woman who had a gun that a club member stabbed to death. All of this happening as the Rolling Stones played on totally unaware. More recently, though, the group was tied to what's known as the River Run Riot. That was a clash with the rival gang, the Mongols, happening back in 2002 at Harrah's Casino in Laughlin, Nevada. That left 3 people dead and multiple people injured, Yasmin. But in this specific case, still too early to tell, again, what other charges could be coming at a higher federal level here. Yasmin.
Morgan Chesky for us. Thank you, Morgan. Appreciate it. Coming up, at least one person is dead after a cable car plunged onto a sidewalk in Colombia, how officials say it happened. Plus, the dramatic courtroom moment today in Karen Reed's murder trial over the death of her cop boyfriend. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Volkswagen is telling the owners of certain cars maybe don't use the front passenger seat. We're going to tell you why in just a couple of minutes. Up first, though, to Capitol Hill now, where an unlikely crusader testified today. We are talking about Paris Hilton, who spoke in front of a House panel about child welfare programs. Hilton calling for change to the program, sharing her experience with the abuse that she says she suffered while she was in a youth treatment facility.
I was force-fed medications and sexually abused by the staff. I was violently restrained and dragged down hallways, stripped naked, and thrown into solitary confinement.
Incredibly revealing and vulnerable testimony there. Remember, this is not her first congressional rodeo. She talked about this before, becoming a big advocate in the last couple of years for better protections for kids in these types of facilities, even backing a bill to create better reporting standards for what's known as, quote, the troubled teen industry. I want to get right to our congressional reporter, Scott Wong, who's been following this for us. What are Congress people telling you about today's hearing and how Paris Hilton's testimony is actually going to impact the issue?
Yasmin, in fact, just a few minutes ago, I ran into the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson of Louisiana. He had a brief conversation with Paris Hilton earlier today. He praised her for her work on this issue, for dedicating her time and her energy, and said that she is really making a difference in terms of raising the profile of this issue of these facilities, which clearly are a problem. And he said she really has put this issue on the map. She today told lawmakers, specifically drawing attention to vulnerable teens and youth in these facilities, including those with mental health issues, foster children, in a number of other vulnerable populations. Take a listen.
These facilities treat foster youth, kids in the juvenile justice system, youth with disabilities, and youth with mental health issues. I think all the agencies must work together to address the abuse and neglect that is happening, and we can't fix the issue if we don't look at it as a whole.
What are we talking about here? We're talking about something called Title IV-B. It governs child welfare programs that provide oversight for these types of youth facilities. And we have not seen reforms to these types of programs since 2008. The program expired back in 2021, and so a lot of these facilities have really had no oversight for the last several years.
How does someone like Paris Hilton influence legislation here? What are next steps to getting it through?
Yeah, I spoke with Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith of Missouri earlier today. This was his committee that Paris Hilton testified before. He again said that, look, nobody really was talking about these types of youth facilities before Paris Hilton put it on the map. He also praised her as being extremely brave and sharing her personal, oftentimes emotional and graphic testimony before lawmakers. And what Jason Smith told me was that his committee, in a very bipartisan way, he's a conservative, he's working with liberals such as Danny Davis of Illinois. They are working to reauthorize these programs as soon as this summer before the Ways and Means Committee with big backing from Paris Hilton.
Scott Wong for us. Thank you, Scott. Want to get you over to the 5 things our team thinks that you should know about tonight. Number 1, a law enforcement source telling NBC News that Matthew Perry's ketamine suppliers could face charges. Remember, Perry died back in October from what officials said were the acute effects of ketamine. The source saying the federal investigation is ongoing and there's no immediate action. Number 2, today, a former president of Honduras was sentenced in New York to 45 years in prison. Prosecutors saying he accepted bribes and worked with drug traffickers to let more than 400 tons of cocaine get to the United States. He was president of Honduras from 2014 to 2022. He's denied taking bribes and is expected to appeal. Number 3, today, a tense moment in the trial of Karen Reed, the woman in Massachusetts who's charged with murder in the death of her police officer boyfriend back in 2022. While the jury was deliberating, the judge and defense lawyer got into a disagreement about the verdict slip that the jurors got. And then the judge kind of snapped at Reed.
Excuse me, this is funny, Ms. Reed? All right, we're done.
The judge seemed to notice a reaction on Reed's face that she did not like. That jury deliberated all day, but still has not come to a verdict. At number 4, Volkswagen's recalling more than 270,000 SUVs here in the U.S. because the front passenger airbags may not inflate in a crash. The recall covers certain vehicles from 2020 through 2024 model years. Dealers are going to replace the relevant parts, but for now, officials saying owners should try not to use the front passenger seat when possible. Number 5, the U.S. women's soccer team announcing its roster for the Olympics, and superstar Alex Morgan's not on it. Morgan says that she is, quote, disappointed, but is still going to cheer the team on. It's a new era for this team. The group is going to be way younger than in past years, and the head coach just started. All right, we are officially 1 month away from the start of the Paris Olympics. And with millions of fans that flood the City of Lights, there are still some questions hanging over the final preps, like, will the Seine River be clean enough to hold swimming events? And can the French government properly secure the games from threats? NBC's Keir Simmons sat down with the mayor of Paris today to talk all about it and joins me now. Let's start with the river question, Keir, if we can. The mayor actually was supposed to swim in the Seine on Monday to kind of prove how clean it was. Yeah. She had to postpone it, it seems. Why was that? Yeah. Is she still going to do it?
Well, Mayor Anne Hidalgo says that she will do it next month. She's a rare example, Yasmin, actually, of a politician who was there at the beginning of an Olympic idea and is still here to see it through. And swimming in the Seine was something that she really loved the idea of. She's a socialist. She likes the idea of opening up the city to people. There are those Parisians who are already complaining that many of it's shut down because so many areas, so many icons are being used as Olympic venues. But will the Seine be ready as a venue? I asked her.
Swimming in the Seine was your idea?
Yeah. Yes, it was my idea.
You're pleased you did it? Or
yes, I will swim in the River Seine. Not now because the weather is not so well in Paris, but also because we have election.
Everyone's worried that it's not ready. You say,
yes, it's ready.
You say je ne regrette rien?
It's ready, it's ready.
Now, honestly, right now, it doesn't look ready. It does look brown. It's clearly the waters are high. Parisians say the summer comes in and it cools, it drops, it gets calmer. We certainly hope so in a month's time. Again, the mayor there says she's confident. Other Paris officials tell me, too, that they believe it, but that's the way it will work.
We will see it when it happens. Of course, all eyes are going to be on that Olympics, Keir.
Yes, we will.
Yes, yes, we certainly will. I want to talk about potential threats, right? We remember all what happened during the Atlanta Olympics in Centennial Park and the bombing there. What are they doing to prepare for potential threats to the Paris Olympics?
Throwing everything at it is the honest answer. Bringing in extra security soldiers, bringing in help from abroad. The mayor told me they're getting a lot of help from the US, a lot of intelligence. And the way that she answered, I think, really reflects that. What she wanted to say was that we are doing everything. Take a listen.
We've been identifying dangerous individuals, putting them apart. In Paris, there are also special units, like for all kind of games, all Olympic games. We also have militaries. The army has come over Paris. They have camps in the Vincennes forest. And there is private security. So as you see, there is a lot of attention. We're really following everything to ban all risk of attack.
I don't know if you can hear Yasmin, but there is a kind of a party atmosphere here on the Trocadero where we are in front of the beautiful Eiffel Tower. So certainly the French, Parisians, tourists coming here seem very relaxed. You know, another aspect that might be worth just keeping an eye on is countries that are opposed to, if you like, France. Countries like Russia, countries like Iran, trying to disrupt the games through cyber and things like that. It's not just a security threat. There are other threats. In my experience, though, once the opening ceremony gets underway, party starts.
I have an idea, Keir, for your next segment, possibly tomorrow. Take a swim in the Seine, and then come back to us and let us know how it goes. Yes. Keir Simmons for us.
Do I have to say yes now?
Let the news desk know.
Okay, thank you.
The assignment desk. They're on it for you. Keir Simmons, thank you. All right, when we come back, the new ruling from Brazil's top court, how it could reduce the country's massive prison population, plus why farmers in Denmark may have to pay an annual tax on their cows. We'll be right back. All right, NBC covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because it's tough to read, to watch, or listen to all of them, our teams around the world have done it for you. Here's a look at what they're watching in a segment that we call The Global. From Colombia, officials say a cable car fell, killing at least one person, hurting 20 others. A manager for the cable system said it hit another cabin car and then fell around 30 feet to the ground. Officials are investigating what happened. Over to Brazil, the country's top court voted to decriminalize possession of marijuana for personal use. Brazil's one of the last countries in Latin America to do it. It could really bring down the number of people in prison there. The court still has to figure out how much marijuana is considered for personal use and when it'll take effect. Out of Denmark, a world first. The country is going to tax farmers for greenhouse gases coming from their cows, their sheep, and their pigs. It'll start in 2030. Evan Gershkovich, the Wall Street Journal reporter arrested in Russia more than a year ago in a closed-door courtroom today for the start of the spying trial against him. He is facing espionage charges that both he, The Journal and the U.S. government strongly deny. You can see Gershkovich here in the defendant's cage, his head shaved, a yellow padlock locking him in. The Wall Street Journal calling the whole thing a sham trial, bogus charges, and if convicted, he faces up to 2 decades in prison. Want to bring in Josh Lennerman. It's a closed-door trial, Josh. What do we know about what's going down in that courtroom today and what could come next here? Because he has so few legal protections inside Russia.
That's right. Essentially no legal protections. And because it's closed door, we have almost no idea what is going on in that courtroom. We know that the next hearing will be about 6 weeks from now. And we know, based on what prosecutors have filed, that the accusation centers on the notion that the CIA ordered him and instructed Evan Gershkovich to travel to Yekaterinburg, which is where this trial is taking place, to obtain secret information about a massive Russian tank factory. That's about all that Russia has released. And as you pointed out, no actual evidence, but we don't know what the details of what is happening inside the courtroom, and we probably will not have any substantive update until there is potentially a verdict and a sentencing. One major piece of information we got today was just the fact that his head had been shaved and his appearance. And I want you to hear what the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, his employer, had to say about that. Take a listen.
His head was shaven not by choice. And so that, I think, all fits this Russian narrative of making him look like a prisoner, making him look like someone who committed a crime.
Obviously, his family is hoping that this trial is not going to end in a conviction, Yaz, but statistically, it's not looking good. Less than 1% of criminal trials in Russia's judicial system end in an acquittal. And when it comes to espionage cases like this, it's essentially unheard of. And so that is why the U.S. government is signaling they think this is a sham trial. They think that the decision has already been made. The possibility of him being released, it's even being politicized here at home. You got this really contentious, presidential election that we're dealing with. The former president saying today himself that he'd actually get Gershkovich out if he wins. What do we know about kind of any backdoor conversations that are being had for his release with the Biden administration? Well, I thought it was interesting that the State Department today, in their comments on this, suggested that this might be linked in some way, that they might be seeking one deal that would bring home both Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan, who is a former U.S. Marine, also in Russian custody, charged with espionage. And when it comes to the Russian side, what they could get out of a potential prisoner swap, we've heard earlier this year from President Putin, who hinted that he might be interested in getting back a Russian prisoner named Vadim Krasakov, who is imprisoned in Germany on a murder charge. That would be complicated because the U.S. doesn't have him in custody to release. But that appears to be potentially the contours of a deal if there is one to be reached here.
Josh Lennerman for us. Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. And coming up, everybody, a new study getting at the question, are plant-based meats better for us than the real stuff? We're getting into those findings coming up next. All right, welcome back. A new report out today suggesting that plant-based alternatives may be healthier for the heart than meat, despite being ultra-processed. An analysis of previous studies found that risk factors for heart disease like total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, which is, by the way, the bad one, and body weight all improved when various animal-based meats were replaced with plant substitutes. I want to bring in Dr. Natalie Azar to talk more about this. So we have been kind of talking about this bad ultra-processed food for your health in general. But this report is essentially saying if you're comparing these meat alternatives, for instance, like Beyond Meat, like I eat a lot of that because I don't eat meat, I only eat fish, to meat, it's a better alternative?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I like the way this study was done. And of course, the reason that the study was done is that for years we've been telling people to eat less red meat, right? And so a lot of people have turned to these, different plant-based sort of options to get the same flavor, to get the same, sort of idea about eating meat. And what the study, in fact, did show was that there were a lot of these cardiovascular parameters that really did improve. What study has not been done, Yasmin, is comparing outcomes in people who eat red meat versus plant-based products. For example, does that, improvement in your HDL translate into a reduction in heart attack and stroke? We don't have that data.
Long-term outcomes.
Long-term, exactly.
Okay,
it's like we have okay, great, these metabolic things are changing.
Right,
exactly, but
down.
Exactly. But I think if you're talking about just sort of plant-based products in general and sort of this designation as ultra-processed, they're not all created equal. If you have an ultra-processed food that is extraordinarily high in sodium and saturated fat and really, really bad carbs.
Like certain potato chips.
Potato chips, perfect example. Or pour water into
I love
something.
A good chip.
Or like, I know, right? But everything in moderation, we said, right? Or all you need to do is pour a little water in it and boom, you have dinner. That's probably not going to be that healthy, right? But if you have something that's pea-based or soy-based and it just happens to look like a hamburger patty and maybe it's ultra-processed, it may not actually be as bad for you as the name would imply.
And we don't have that much time left, but I find this fascinating. Is it more about what this kind of processed food is made from?
Yes, it is. And so, some guidance for people is to actually look at how much sodium is in there, how much saturated fat is in there, what is the protein source, does it have gluten? You might be gluten sensitive. Are there artificial sweeteners? We try I tell all my patients to eat a whole food plant-based diet, but in the real world, we're all eating some amount of processed food. We have to, right? I mean, we can't spend all day eating whole food.
Yeah, you need to have fun.
But that's what we want to go towards, right? Exactly. The nuts and legumes and fresh vegetables and fresh fruit, then you don't have to worry about how processed it is.
Right.
But I think the bottom line is that ultra processed is not ultra bad all the time.
How do your patients react to that recommendation, Dr. Nack?
My patients are really, really they follow every single solitary thing that I tell them to do.
I bet they do. Thank you. Appreciate it. Still to come, everybody, the big online trend about buying nothing, how people are resisting the splurge in tonight's original. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. As we get new data this week showing rocky consumer confidence, it's not a shock that the high cost of living has people getting creative. Enter a new social media trend called, quote, the no spend challenge, when people go on a spending fast by not buying anything but the bare essentials. Instead, you're pocketing all that cash, saving it for a vacation, retirement, or paying off a debt. Vicki Nguyen has more.
No new clothes, books, makeup, home goods, nothing.
The latest trend catching fire on social media.
What if I spent nothing for the next 337 days?
It is a green day. We did not spend any money today.
The no spend trend, or so-called no buy challenge.
Tip number 1 is no window shopping whatsoever.
An online community gaining attention with millions of views on TikTok and a thriving Reddit community supporting those trying to resist the urge to splurge.
We spent at least $1,000 eating out every single month. This is why we're doing the no spend challenge for the month of June.
Anything that gets people to be more thoughtful about their spending is a good thing. If it comes from TikTok, that's fine.
Some vowing to go as long as a year, buying nothing but absolute essentials, foregoing clothes, gadgets, fancy vacations, and even dinners out.
The goal is to use up what I already have.
Others doing it 1 month at a time.
The pitfalls is that maybe it's just a flash in the pan, and you might do that for a week, maybe 2 weeks, but then when it's over, you start revenge spending.
It comes at an interesting economic moment, a pandemic-era spending boom that landed Americans with $1 trillion in credit card debt for the first time last year, with delinquencies now on the rise, and an economy that's leaving consumers with mixed emotions.
While the headline numbers tell you that unemployment is really low, the economy's still growing, the stock market's at or near record highs, what people feel personally is actually not that great. When they open their wallet to buy groceries, when they're filling up their gas tank, when they're paying their monthly bills.
Reports showing consumer confidence wavering as many Americans still feel the pinch of inflation on their wallets. Major retailers like Walgreens and Target slashing prices on everyday items, trying to lure shoppers back. But for these thrifty no spenders, it's the bigger ticket items that will have to wait.
Not shopping has allowed me to free up a lot of extra money, and any extra cash that I have, I take and I put towards my savings.
And Vicki Nguyen joining us now. I got to say, Vicki, I'm a spender. I'm a shopper, as my husband knows well. So this does not sound fun for me. But I know that there are some groups out there, kind of support groups in a way, that folks are actually turning to amidst this no-spend trend.
Yeah, the Buy Nothing groups. This started back in 2013 by two women, Lisa Clark and Rebecca Rockefeller, as a social experiment, Yasmin. They wanted to know, could we spend no money, help the environment, and get everything we need? Fast forward to now, we're talking about 10 million people who are part of 8,000 Buy Nothing groups across the world. And they just launched an app 2 years ago. And I'll tell you what, everybody who is a part of one of these groups, Yasmin, it could be you too, is obsessed. They say the magic happens when you put an ask out for something. Like, you might be like, oh, you know what? I need a lacrosse stick for my kid.
Yeah.
And you'd be shocked at how many people have things that can help you in this circular economy. There's a lot of stuff out there, and some might argue there's enough stuff out there. And if you just ask in your community, not only are you getting, you're not spending money, there is no expectation of trading. This is just, you ask, you get, and that's it. You're also building community because these are local groups. And so there are all these fringe benefits in addition to helping your wallet. The one thing I do want to say is when you are meeting up with a stranger for the first time, always bring a buddy. Make sure someone knows where you're going. But more often than not, it's a great community builder.
Okay. I'll look into it. I promise. I swear. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. Vicki Wynn, thank you. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour, everybody. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.